If everybody's ready, I was told no introduction, and I think that's the best way, because here's a gentleman that needs no introduction. He's going to spend some time with us tonight. Everybody, if you would, please say hello by hand to Bob Heil K9EID, and I will mute myself and turn this over to this. Bob, it's your floor, sir.
Boy, well, it's just so much fun to join club meetings today. I do at least 2, sometimes 3 a week, plus Ham Nation, and I just love to share the science of this hobby. And I do mean science, because there's so much to the hobby, and I'm not reading it. I'm not seeing it. And then yet I hear a lot of guys into the hobby that haven't been here quite as long as I, and they're kind of like out there in no man's land, and we try to help them so they can understand it. I'm going to go through some things here. First of all, we're going to take you on a little bit of a history move. Heil Sound has been around for 55 years now. But what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit also in this presentation about speech articulation. Not only do I talk about it, we demo these things. So you want to listen carefully, and we'll go through all of it. I was very, very lucky as a 15-year-old kid to follow one of my high school chums into ham radio. And that was my first station, Harvey Wells, SX99, that big box is a VHF converter, RME, so that I could get on 6 meters. I was a technician for 17 years. I never listened below 50 megacycles. I didn't need to. The bands were open like 24/7. And it was just a marvelous time. 1959, I became one of the first 10 single sideband stations on 6 meters. That's a 6 and 2 Thunderbolt, 1.5 kilowatts. And the antenna I had on 2 meters, as you see below, is 128 elements on 2 meters. So as you can tell, I was very serious about 6 and 2 meters, and I learned so much. But I started my life, I was 12 years old. My parents, God bless them, bought me a Hammond organ. That's a C3, same thing as a B, only in a church console. And 2 years later, I started playing. And in 1954, I got a job in a restaurant. It was about 15 miles up the road from my home in Marissa, Illinois, southwestern Illinois. And I was making $50 a weekend in 1954, and it would mostly spent on ham radio gear. At the same time, in 1956, I became the organist at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. Now, what's important for you to pay attention here is that organ hadn't been played in 20 years, and the man that was the organist there and started playing again, Stan Can, a well-renowned organist in the theater organ world, he hired me and took me under his wing, and we had to voice and tune those pipes. This is very interesting. Tuning is no big deal, octave to octave, but you had to listen, mentally dissect what you hear. You see, the situation is most people just hear, oh, okay, I heard it. But we're talking about listening, mentally dissecting all the harmonics, all of the things that make and create a specific sound different from others. And in ham radio, it's so important to dig into a pileup and pull the harmonics out of what you're listening to. We'll get further into that. But I was so blessed that Stan Can put me under his wing, and I was able to do things with that great Fox. It was amazing. But I got tired of playing. I had played about 15 years professionally, and I started building things. The two speakers you see, the two guys standing on top of them, those came from the Fox Theater. They were throwing them out. Well, a ham doesn't throw anything away. And I started building this big sound system. I didn't have an idea. I was just doing it. Bought some Macintosh amps and put it together. And the next thing you know, I was being called upon by the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis to bring that up, because in those days they were using little column speakers. They were not very good. And so we actually were one of the first to be able to bring quality, large sound to the arenas and clubs if you wanted to, but really had a wonderful time in those days building. And it's all because of ham radio and the pipe organ at the Fox teaching me how to listen. And those things all melted together. All of a sudden, we were thrust into quite a deal. The picture you see on the left is Jerry Garcia. And one night, I got a call in 1970 from the Fox Theater stage manager. And he said, "You still have those big speakers I gave you a couple of years ago?" And I said, yeah. Well, why? He said, "Well, you got them working?" I said, yeah. He said, "Talk to this guy. They came into the Fox tonight, and all of their equipment was confiscated the night before." He handed the phone to Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. Now, if any of you are up on the Grateful Dead and really rock and roll history, that's where it started, that night. And you can go to the internet and put in "Rock and Roll Sound Was Born." The night rock and roll sound was born. And that whole night at the Fox opened it all up. And so we got just so many people were calling in down in the lower rights, Pete Townsend. I was with The Who for 6 years. And of course, my good friend Joe Walsh with the James Gang. And these people were hiring me because they heard that I was able to make them sound better. Peter Frampton in the right corner up. Joe and I had built a talk box. A talk box is a mechanical device that you put a tube in your mouth and the sound of the guitar comes out the tube and you can make the guitar sounds talk. And Joe did it with Rocky Mountain Way. And I gave one to Peter Frampton in 1974 for a Christmas present. And many of the interviews I hear with him, he will mention the fact that really opened his career with the Heil Talkbox. We became very good friends to this date. The other one that was really, really a dear thing is Les Paul. And I was helping these people. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. But audio was not in the circle yet. It was still just little speakers and terrible sounds. We changed that. Who is that group? A little quiz for you. That's a live group. That was their first tour that we did. That was in a park. And that group, you ready for this? Is ZZ Top without beards. They went several years before they started growing the beards. Still very, very good friends with Billy Gibbons and all of them. So those are kind of the crazy days that I went through. I do have to tell you one thing. I'm running around with the biggest drug addicts in the world. However, I've never tasted beer. I've never smoked a cigarette. For goodness sakes, I've never done drugs. And it was all about helping them. Like Pete Townsend always said, leave him alone, man. He's got a soldering iron. He makes us sound good, and he can drive the truck. And I did. One day, I got a call, and it was Paul Klipsch. Paul Klipsch is the father of the folded horn. Actually, one of the fathers of the high five movement, because he was an amazing audio engineer. There's quite a story. There's so much of this. I'd love to come back and share some of that kind of history with you. But Paul called me and he said, "You the guy that's got that 10,000 watt PA?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I want to come and see it." And I'm going, "Oh boy," because I'm not an engineer, I'm a ham. And he flew his plane up to Marissa, Illinois, spent all day with me. And it was really cool. He was about 6'7", looking down over my shoulder. And why did you do that? Well, how come you did that? Well, where'd you learn to do that? Well, all these questions. Not one time did he cut me down. I figured he would, but he didn't. Put me in his airplane, little Bonanza, flew me back to Hope, Arkansas, and I spent the night with he and his wonderful wife, Belle. The next day, we went out to his lab, and his lab was an old AT&T building that they had given to him because he was working on some projects for the original telephone company, and that was his lab. In that picture, you see a plexiglass K-horn. That was his famous speaker. It was an amazing piece. We don't have enough time here to talk about it, but I love talking about some of Paul's things. But he changed my life because he brought me things. He guided me to the studies of Bell Labs. That was the idea factory of the 1920s. Bell Labs was it was a consolidation of American Telephone and Telegraph and Western Electric, which was the manufacturing arm of the Bell system. Check this out. Now, check this out. There were 4,000 scientists and engineers assigned to this newly created Bell Telephone Labs. And they were fully dedicated to researching how our ears worked and what frequencies were most important to understand the spoken word. They had a problem. They had a huge problem. They took 2 wires in East Coast Bell Labs and ran them to California. And what's crazy is about every 50 miles across America, they had a relay station to keep the voltage up, to keep the frequency up. But when they got out there, this is what the telephone sounded like. It's like, what in the world happened to our audio? Everything's fine, but we can't understand. Well, it's flat. Everything's flat. And what's the problem? So what they did is they put 2 guys on the old case, a Dr. Fletcher and a Dr. Munson. Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson figured it out. And what they figured out was the fact that we do not hear flat. Everybody thinks, oh, we gotta have it flat and it's gotta be just perfect. And no, a flat response does not play to the needs of the human ear. Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson figured it out. Check out this graph. You will notice down at the level of room level of 20, 30 dB, look at the big holes in that thing. It's not flat. This is your ears. This is a perfect example that they did back in those days of what our human hearing system looks like. But notice one thing. As you get up to about 100 and 110 dB, everything gets kind of flat. So when you gripe at the kids coming up beside you in the car and they're so loud they can't stand it, when it's loud, really loud, all of the bass, all of the vocal mid-range, all the cymbals, it's all there. But if you play it down to around 20, 30, you got to do something. Well, what do you have to do? And that just what happens there? Well, what we have to do is equalize it. And the big thing that happened with all of this is I was off the air for 12 years. And when I came back, that's exactly what I heard in the rigs. I'm going, what? Well, I got this matching microphone on my keyboard. Really? Yeah. It sounds great. I said, no, it really doesn't. I can't quite understand what you said. Well, Bill, it tells me I sound good. Joe said I sound good. I'm telling you, you don't sound very good. So what I did is I took the equalizer out of one of the mixers that we had built for the rock industry, and I built the first equalizer that ham radio had ever seen or heard about, the EQ200. I built it and I wrote an article, and they ran it in QST in 1982, July. And it got the cover award. I didn't know they had cover awards. And I was just so honored. Oh my gosh. But I didn't know. I didn't understand what was about to happen. Well, what it was is that we had all these incredible things going on, but nobody knew about the Fletcher-Munson curve. And it also was one of the things that too many lows makes it difficult to understand each word. Don't believe me? There you are. All I do is put in some lows. And it's hard to understand because we need that speech articulation. And if we take the lows out of it and put the 2 to 3K is where the magic happens, bingo, things happen. So now we can put all of our power in that 2.4, 2.5 reason. One of the things that I find very, very almost disgusting is that I never hear about things such as power focus. Have you ever heard about power focus? You do on your antennas. What about your audio? The right microphone element delivers your voice. The same advantage wielded by a Yagi compared to a dipole. It can have a direction, and restricting the bandwidth of that transmitted signal forces the available power just in that 2 to 3K. You see, Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson discovered that we need elevated from 2 to 3K to understand the difference of an F and an S and a P and a B. If you don't have that, it's difficult for the other end to understand what you're saying. And so we have to develop something to make that happen. Well, that something is the equalizer. And the other thing is the pattern. You want to have a microphone or an audio system that creates a pattern just like a Yagi. It is so, so important. And yet I don't hear many people talk about it. Why? Well, I don't know. That's why I do these things, to try to bring you some of the history and some of the reasoning that we have to do that. Let me change microphones here. This, by the way, is a PR22. I was asked by Paul Rogers of Bad Company years ago to build him a microphone and he didn't have to equalize. This has no EQ on it. It's flat. And so he didn't have to worry about his sound man. He said, sometimes they don't get it right. And as you can understand and hear it, it's very clean. It's very articulate. Has everything is there and balanced. Let me change. And I got to set the gain or I'll blow everybody away here. Okay. The PR40. PR40 has been quite something. It has become the darling of the podcast industry. And what we've discovered is that no other microphone does what this does. I was asked to build a microphone for stage presence that they didn't have to stand in front of. If you think about it, you see a lot of people that have their little Paul microphone and they got to be right here and they can't move because the pattern is terrible. Well, the pattern should be all the way around for a good 90. no problem. 180, no problem. If you close your eyes, you wouldn't know or hear that I'm changing it. But then we come to another situation. And this situation is one that in live sound, in broadcast, we have monitors. And those monitors are coming back at you. And if you don't have a way to reduce that, then you're going to get feedback and all kinds of weird phasing problems. And so I developed the PR40 and I solved that. And nobody has ever done anything like it. So what it did, up at the top is the element. Every microphone built from $5,000 to whatever, they end up with just 4 little holes, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock up at the top, right up around in here. And that's it. Well, that's not enough. They don't get enough of the rear rejection to cancel. And it has to be out of phase. So what I did is I built what I call the collection tube. It's actually a shock mount inside here. And the whole bottom of the element is open so that we get 180, 360, the whole thing. But here's the kicker. Pay close attention to what's about to happen. This is the only microphone that will have 40 dB of rear rejection. Well, now we're going to prove it. I've got these 2 microphones. They're exactly alike, different colors. But when I bring them together, it's going to raise the level on my mixer, and what you hear, 3 dB. Double my power. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I would want you to close your eyes. Listening is a mental process. We talked about it earlier. Hearing is just, okay, I hear it. Let's really dig into this and see if you can hear 3 dB, double your power, go away. 1, 2, 3. No. The human being cannot detect 3 dB unless we're in a perfect anecho chamber. You know, it's just everything's got to be right, but it's certainly not going to be in my studio or in your ham shack. So why do it? I can get you 10 dB just by using the right equalization, by using the right microphone with the right response. It's just so crazy because nobody seems to, they don't seem to care. Here comes the biggie. I have a little plug. This little plug is backwards. Let me unplug this guy. Pin 2 is hooked to 3. 3 is hooked to 2. We're going to put this together. And no big deal. Still sounds the same. What's the big deal? Well, it's out of phase. When I talk in this one, the diaphragm goes up. When I talk in this one, the diaphragm goes down. What happens when I do both of them? Nothing. They cancel. They're canceled. Oh, it's still working. But they cancel. And so now, oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. I wish we had about 3 hours. It's my favorite subject. There's so many things to talk about what phasing does. And I'm going to play you about a 3 or 4 minute little video I have. I loved phase array. I never understood phased array. It always, oh, that's going to cost a fortune. This one, I think, cost me all of $32 for the phasing line. Check it out. This is very cool. We're going to, let me get this all ready to go. Okay, here we go. Of a 75-meter phased array antenna system, consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG213. In order to make the antennas directive from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43 foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried, and just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. Take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after I get done mowing it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm going to have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it because, if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it gets looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
the system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
Yeah, well, I see they introduced a display on it, and I don't know if that is their form of portable, or what that is. Your wire, some of that hooked up to your computer, and then did you use your handheld to go through it?
Here's some great sounding AM stations, and we were getting about 20 dB front to back.
When the leaves drop off, I'll start using it. Daryl, purchasing digital audio recorder, I need to do that too. That'd be nice to have. And I was going to mention to you too about your pictures with Fifi. I'd sent that out to a few friends, and one of my cousins that was.
Well, we were talking about you yesterday with Brian. Brian, the thought was that you could locate that remote receiver out at Brian's QTH. And of course, by the way, if you have it out of Brian's QTH, you could use the internet.
In 1.0 VUW, well, I'm going to need to go up on the hill and swing that log around to the west because you want to go off the back. Apparently, I thought I just didn't think about which direction anybody would be.
Great performance from just a couple of pieces of wire. You can do this. It's very simple. You need just 3 things. Of course, you need the antennas, but you need the delay line, you need the remote switch, and of course then the downlead links. The RCS 8V from Ameritron makes it so easy, but the delay lines are important. They have to be exactly 43 foot on 75, 22.6 on 40, and 11.4 feet on 20 meters. The downlead links, both of them have to be exactly the same length, and all of that can be coiled up and put in that container box that you bury. Keep in mind, you can do this with regular wire dipoles. Just make sure they're exactly the same height and the spacing is correct. Have fun with this great technology of phased arrays. I had those up about 8 years when I had a place down in the Ozarks. Amazing. And like everybody else, I was thinking, oh my gracious, I hear about phased array. You're going to be talking a lot of money. And no, not at all. Not at all. As you saw, it's a pair of dipoles. They had to be the same height, the same distance, 65 feet on 75 meters, that kind of thing. And it's just one of those wonderful things that not a lot of people talk about, and that's a shame. But phasing affects everything we do. I mean, everything. How does your noise blanker? How does your any of your receivers? How do you get rid of somebody that comes flying in next to you and you hit the notch? How does that work? It takes that signal out of phase and he's gone. We just proved that. And there's so many things that we need to know about our radios that the manufacturers don't really help us. Here's a very, very interesting thing. I took this is on 75 meters, and here we are talking about the slow and fast AVC and the RF gain. And what's so interesting about this is that I never hear about it. Check it out.
I remember about this old stuff that we used to do and then apply it to a new application, and it works great, so that's very good. I love the technical abilities that come along with this hobby. The technician class was truly a technician class test. And,
AGC is very important.
So very good comment. All right,
Back off the RF gain.
moving right along
And
here.
your signals are so much easier to copy. Back off that RF gain. Make sure you're on slow AVC. Well, you just heard it. I mean, it's something that you never hear much about, and I don't know why, but it's just the way it happens. We don't hear all of these things. So you want to pay attention to what is going on inside that box with all the knobs on it. I got another one here for you.
And I mostly just am involved in right turn on the 2-meter net and the 40.
Big
and
change
80
backing
meter
off the
net.
RF gain.
That's pretty much
Slow down the
it
AGC.
used to be on packet, but I don't enjoy the computer part of the into the.
I never, ever have my RF gain open. I never use a preamp. And there was proof. All it does is add noise. We want to get rid of noise. And it's not all about a noise blanker. But what's the other side of the receiver? For years, I worked for many of these companies. In late 99, right, 2000, Dr. Inouye, who owns Icom, came to me and he wanted to see if I could help him with a new transceiver he was thinking about. And he sent me a picture. And he had their great IC781, which is a wonderful, wonderful transceiver in those days. It was the first one that had a screen with it. And he had a picture of my Goldline microphone and this. And it really freaked me out. It's like, whoa, this is Dr. Inouye. He found out how important equalization was, and nobody had it ever. So he wanted to build this in his radios. So ever since Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 3, all the way through to the 7300, 7610, they all have our 2-band equalizer. Now, what's interesting about an equalizer like this, I set the frequencies of the 2 filters. There's a bass filter and a treble filter. The bass filter is set at 160 hertz, and you can increase it or you can notch it. The treble is sitting around 2.5K. You can either increase it or you can decrease it. And that is so important. And here's a very good example of that. If I roll off the low end and bring up to 2.5K, you hear a much more articulate, easy to copy signal. No, it's not hi-fi. We're not a hi-fi broadcast station. We're ham radio communicators. But just listen how clean and how much easier it is to understand when I adjust equalization. That's all I'm doing. And I'll roll that back and we'll bring it back to flat. There we go. And that is flat. And it's still very good because this microphone also has a little peak in it for you. But again, equalization is also important. And we're going to get into that just a little bit. But I also, for the past couple of years, I'm going, why isn't somebody doing something about the receiver? And so I did. This is our parametric receive system. And there's never been anything like it. First of all, it has a 3-band EQ in it. The low end is sitting at 160 hertz, plus or minus. The high end is at 6K, plus or minus. But the mid-range, that's where all the action is in human voices. The mid-range is a parametric. And you can see where first you set the gain, usually set that up about 10 dB, but then the other one is like a little receiver, and you just dial it up from 400 to 4K. I'll let you do that right here. My mixer that I'm using has a parametric mid in it. I'll turn this back on. Okay, and I can sweep it from 2K, here's down to 400K. And you can set that wherever you want. All I'm doing is sweeping from 400 to about 3K. And there's a magic spot usually right in through here. But if you don't have it, there's a flat microphone. And it might be painted the same color as your radio, and it might have the same name on it, but they aren't very good with articulation. And that's the thing that I figured we needed to have in a receiver. And so I built the parametric receive system. And it's a wonderful product if you haven't paid any attention to it. Let me see if I messed this up a while ago because yeah, you'll be able to see a little bit here. Let's see what's going on somewhere. Find a signal that we can listen to.
Power, or if some of them have linears on or not, but that might be some of the difference.
Now, what I can do.
Were you hearing Jay up in New Hampshire?
I'm not sure.
Let's dig that guy out of the noise.
Drove up the driveway in the corner of the garage, and I heard you guys.
I'm going to put it back to flat. It's the way you hear him.
Somebody in Oklahoma switched over to the Tar Heel.
Man, all kinds of crap around him. But I think you can hear how much better we copied him just by increasing that mid-range, rolling off the low end. And again, there's nothing like it. The other thing that's very cool about it is it has 2 headphone amps. We have one of the headphone amps that could be used for a logger, a second for the operator. But you could take this and use the left side and the right side of your headphones if you have a hearing imbalance. How cool is that? And again, there's nothing like this on the market that can help you do that. I'm very, very blessed and honored by all of the guys that buy this for one reason: to be able to have that balance control. And there's also an output for recording. So if you want to record something, you don't have to have a bunch of Y chords and all that kind of stuff. So we really spent some time. The speaker is magnificent. It's a Paul Klipsch design that Paul taught me years ago how to do this. The speaker is a 5-inch woofer in a tuned cavity. You got to tune the cavity. And how you do that is you take the speaker outside into free air, find out what the resonance of that speaker is. Then you make the the cavity to tune that speaker so that there is no phase distortion. And it works so well. And I just have to tell you that the many, many things that I've done with it, I'm amazed at what some of the guys are using it for and how they're using it. The other thing you want to get into is how do you set up the DSP? These manufacturers really don't help you. It depends on your voice a lot, but it also depends on that microphone. Just because it's painted the same color, no, you have to spend a little time to discover, is it really what I need? And you also have to figure the objectives. Are you a DX? Are you a rag shooter? What are you doing? And so different things for different people. With equalization, you can do all of it with one microphone. But listen to your signal on a separate receiver. I don't like to use the monitor. I like to use a separate receiver. The problem is that the receiver none of these things have really great monitor speakers and monitor systems, and the speakers on them are a joke. Little 50-cent speakers they stick in a box, painted the same color, and you think it's matching. But what drives it? Every transceiver out there, 15,000 bucks to 400, has 1 or 2 watts at 10% distortion. It drives me nuts. I can't stand distortion. Guess I learned that from Paul. No, I just learned from listening, tuning those pipe organs, understanding the harmonics. Distortion drives me nuts, but they all have it. So I figured I'm going to do something a little better, and I did. And the speaker amplifier is amazing. It's 25 watts at 0.1%. 0.1. We're talking hi-fi levels there. It's a balanced input. And of course, it's got the 5-inch tweeter, the 5-inch woofer, 3.5-inch titanium tweeter, all of that in the tuned cavity. So these are things that we've never had before. And you really have to pay attention. One of the other things I want to cover while we're kind of on the subject is the Icom. Since it has my EQ in it, it's very, very simple. That's why I kept it to 2 bands. You don't need 15 bands. That's a joke. It's an ego. I got a big EQ. We're only listening to maybe 3K. So what you do with the Icoms, and they're all the same from back in 2000, if they have EQ in them, you set the bass, you roll it off a little bit. If you don't roll it off, then it's going to be something like this. No, roll it off just a little bit so that it's balanced. And you want to put the treble up to +4 for DX, maybe +2 or so for rag chew. That's it. I don't use compression at all. I don't like compression. I don't think we need it. But if you're going to do it, don't do very much of it. And then mic gain. How do you set mic gain? And it's real easy, but nobody tells you how. You're going to learn, and then you're going to say, really? Huh. I back you up a little bit to about 2003 or 4 or whatever. Dr. Hasegawa came to me from Yaesu, and we had been doing this EQ thing for Icom. And he said, I want to do it better. And so we did a parametric EQ for the 9000, and then he carried it all the way through to the 1200. All of those Yaesu radios have parametric EQ. The problem with equalization that is parametric, although it is the best way to go, oh, buddy, you don't have 2 controls, you have 9. You have 9 controls, and it's very difficult to understand until tonight. It's simple. You have 3 filters. They all do basically the same thing. First, you set the frequency. You want to put it, usually I set the bottom filter at 160. The next knob is going to be bandwidth. So do an octave. So it will go up to 320 and it go down to 80. So then you have a notch or a boost of that frequency. That's so simple. Go to the second one. I usually set that one somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200. You got to listen to see what you like. And again, you want to plus it. I usually do about 4 or 5 dB. You want to set the bandwidth to 1 octave. And then you want to increase it just a little bit. And the all-important one is the last. The third filter, you set it at 2.5, the frequency. You do it at 1 octave, and then you want to boost it. And I boost the heck out of it if I need, depending on what I'm doing. And that's it. It's that simple. But nobody wants to help you. And all of this stuff is on our website. If you're not scurried around on our website, you want to do that. There's a ton of things under the guide. We have all things Yaesu, all things Icom, all things Kenwood, just an amazing amount of things. And you want to check out some of that because I know it will help you. Here's what we do for Yaesu. The older MP series is real simple. Menu 7.7, you set that, the bandwidth, you limit it from 150 to 3,100. And then you want to turn menu 4.4 off. And then from there, you should be in good shape. Depends on how you set the mic gain and so on. And then I just told you about the 2000 and the 9000. All of those rigs have the same parametric EQ in them. And I like to roll off that low end, usually 160 or 200 hertz. Roll that baby off. And then the second one up around 1,000 cycles. You want to play with it. Sometimes I like to boost it a little, but usually I call it woofy. A woofy sound is around 800 to 900. You notch that down a little. And then EQ, crank it all from 2,100 to sometimes 2,500. It's up to you in a wide bandwidth. And so all of that stuff is so helpful, but nobody seems to want to help us. And that's why I love doing these things for you guys and girls. The other thing is that guy. You want to make sure you have the right filter. It's not just a piece of foam. It's actually an acoustical piece of foam that does not stop the audio frequencies. I hear guys everyone, oh, put that muff on. Boy, you got real muff. No, you don't. Not if it's a real live piece of acoustic foam. But you'll notice the pops that I have because my breath is blowing air as I speak, and it's causing the diaphragm to move because of that, not just my words. Put that on, gone. That's how you do it. Very simple, but it has to be right, and it comes with all of our microphones, and we have them separate if you need. But then there's this other thing that really bugs Bob Heil. Oh my gosh! I listen to you guys and gals on the air, and I hear you guys. I got my desk stand down here. How do I sound? I sound good. Oh, no. Well, I'll just turn up the gain. Okay, turn up the gain. Okay, how's that? Well, you sound great. No, you don't. You sound like you're in a roller rink. Well, Bill said I sound fine. I don't care what Bill or Joe tells you. You don't sound very good. You lost all of the transient response. You lost all, I mean, all of the definition, the dynamic range. You have to be no more than 2 inches from a microphone, ever. It's why I brought booms to this industry. We were the first people to do that. And the booms that we do are very, very cool. Here you can see some of this. I don't know if that makes it in the shot, but you know what they are. What's cool about it is we have a patent on this thing. This top plate comes off. You just flip that out and you can lay the cable in that channel. And so you don't have to have a bunch of wire ties and stuff like that. It's really important that we do these kind of things, because I do not want to hear you sound like this. And I hear it. I hear it a lot. And why? Just learn to address a microphone properly and everything great. But don't forget the windscreen. The other thing that we've brought to the industry is our new headset. Well, it's new by several years now. And that's the Pro 7. If you don't have one, you need to get one. There's nothing like it. There's copies that they tried to copy us, but it's, sorry, Charlie. The first thing about it is from Paul Klipsch. Paul's been gone a number of years, but almost every day I think of him because I do things that he's taught me. And this is the only headset ever where the speaker is way down inside this cup. And that's a good 3/4, almost an inch deep. And so when you put this on, if you have a hearing aid, it doesn't feed back, because with all other headsets, you're right here and it just causes a horrible feedback. It doesn't happen here. Again, I get so many compliments and phone calls, and guys, they're just so thrilled they finally have a headset that works. It has a balance control left to right. But here's the kicker, everybody. Pay attention. It's the only headset. All Heil headsets have a phase reversal. What in the world is that? Why do you do that? You heard what we can do with phasing. We can make things go away and come back. Well, you get into a pileup and you hear some little weakie back here. If you reverse the phase, he comes up front and everybody goes behind. You can move signals around in your head acoustically. That's what the Pro 7 does for you. And we have it on many of our others. The other thing, and I read EHAM every day. And if I read a bad review, I nicely find a person and find out what I can do to help him. Usually they haven't read the instructions. They're trying to use an Icom mic on a Kenwood, you know, that kind of thing. No. And we help them. But the biggest one is, that darn Heil headset is so uncomfortable. No, none of our headsets are uncomfortable if you read the instructions. All of our headsets have a piece of steel in here. This isn't plastic like most of them. So if you want to make wider so you don't have so much pressure on your head, or if you got a pinhead like me, adjust it to what you need so the pressure is not on your ears. It's pretty simple. And one thing I did for the ham industry was I got so many people that love the PR40, but it's not horribly expensive. But what we did is we came up with the PR781. It's basically a PR40. I rolled the low end off by 1.5 octaves, and still has a great mid-range, has a little bit more boost at 2.5, but man, it sure is great, and it's been one of the most popular. Elecraft, they sell it. A lot of the other companies they'll advise you for that. Flex Radio, and we're very happy about that because it really is a great microphone. And again, it isn't very expensive. But of course, the master is the PR40. And I didn't intend the PR40 to come into this market. I built it for the broadcasters. But of course, hams discovered it. And it's a wonderful piece, but you have to tame it. It's got a lot of low end. It's 28 cycles on the low end out to about 18K on the top end. And you have to be able to tame that little booger that's really bassy, mushy, and so on. But you get it tamed down, and oh man, it's wonderful. But you know, it's a microphone that all of the broadcasters now are using it. We're very blessed by that. And you're listening to Sirius Radio. Almost all of their microphones now are PR40s, and Leo Laporte's been using it for 10 years. And many podcasters. It's become the darling of the podcast market. So we're very excited about some of that kind of stuff, is that we're able to help people. And that's why I do these things. I want to spend time in helping you get more from your rig. It's so important. If you use an Icom, you can't just stick any microphone in it. One thing that Dr. Inouye has done years ago, all the mic preamps are down in gain, sometimes about 8 to 10 dB. And the reason they are is he wanted to use electrodes. Well, some electrodes are not very good, especially one that they build on their own. But these companies don't build their own. They OEM them out to somebody, and who knows. So Dr. Inouye asked me, he said, build a microphone for Icom, and we did. It won't work on Kenwood. It won't work on Yaesu. Nope. It's why I call it the ICM. It almost spells Icom. It has its own cable, its own connector, its own push-to-talk. It's just wonderful, and it's not very expensive. And so we try to keep all of that together in our headsets. Here's the new BM17. This is that's a classy little baby. It's new, and there's so many of our QRP guys that are out in the boonies are using it with rigs of QRP and backpats and so on. It's wonderful, and it's not very expensive, but it's available with the IC element in it. That's the whole trick, is any of our microphones or headset, if it has an IC after it, it's that deal. And then I get into the fact that I build things so much. I get so ticked off at the connectors. They're junk. They've been junk since 1965, when the CB industry started up, and they have the Foster company, they have a patent on it. And I just got tired of it. You know what I'm talking about. The cable clamps don't work. They're little bitty rings, and it's real hard if it's got a recessed plug. Almost have to have needle nose to get in there, not ours. The Stealth connector is great. It also has the right diameter of cable clamp for our wire. That's another thing. Wire is a joke. It's all like 26 gauge, all into one, about 30% shield. This is 18 gauge, 18 gauge, and I have two of them inside 100% shield of silver. Man, is that solder nice. And so we can have a balance line, and the broadcasters love it. But here, what do you do about push to talk? Audio is AC. Push to talk is DC. And when you take these two signals for your microphone, and these two, which is AC, and these two with DC, and you put them together, there's just a real marriage there that costs so much RFI. I have helped so many guys get rid of their RFI just by using our cable. And that is just wonderful, because there again, I'm playing all day. This is a ham radio station, but it really is my lab where I build things. I love to build. And one of the things about building, if you've been keeping up with me the last, 8.5 years, is Ham Nation. I got the wild idea that we should build on Ham Nation. It took us a year to do it. And here it is, the Pine board. It hit the front page of the front cover of QST 2 years ago, January. Very, very honored by that. First, I built the power supply. They're all modules. Then I built a preamplifier. I actually built this first. This is a preamplifier, by the way. from a Fender Twin for all of you guitar players. And so I said, why not do that for the Pine board? But in true fashion of Bob Heil, it's got my EQ 200 in it. It has to have. You have to have EQ. I'm sorry. You have to have it. So here's that little wonderful preamp right here. Then we get into the transmitter. Now, originally, what I did, I didn't know where this was going to go. Gosh, who did? This is the original one that you'll see on the front cover of QST. It was a 75 meter, 5 watts AM. And I'm on the air with this thing on the mornings. I mean, I have a morning net 3885 that I join, the MOCAM, Missouri, Kansas AM net, and usually about 15, 16 guys every morning, 9 o'clock. Well, we got to playing. I said, you know, get this coil from Martin Jew. That's another thing guys will say. You can't get the parts. Well, I got news for you. Antique Electronic Supply in Mesa, Arizona gets most. But what you can't get, Martin Jew does. And they'll sell you any of it. What the problem had been is the coil. I was winding my own, but I said, oh no. So I called them and they said, sure. That's out of our 811 final. So you can get the coil from Martin. You can get the variable caps, just about everything if you want. But then I got this crazy idea, why not make it band switching? So instead of cutting the coil off here, like the original, I used all of the coil and we tap it. A little hard to see, but here's a switch. So it will do 160, 75, and 40. And all we're doing is just tapping that coil and switching it. That's it. It's that simple. And of course, we're switching the crystals. There's 3 crystals. And this is the antenna tune. Away you go. So much fun. But now everybody said, well, 5 watts, wouldn't it be neat to have a little bit more? I'm on the case. This isn't finished yet, but it's getting close. This is an 807 final. It'll do probably about 40, 50 watts. And I'm only going to do this one for 75, maybe 40, but it's got a 900 volt power supply. I'm going to knock that down a little bit. But yes, when I first started this, I really got blasted. I said, well, you're going to kill people. No. When I was 15 years old and started building, my mentor, K0DGE, Larry Burrows, who I met on 6 meters, was my mentor. He was the chief of KMOX CBS radio in St. Louis. And the first thing he taught me was respect the high voltage. And that's what you have to do, no matter if it's 12 volts or 1,000. You respect it. And so that's what we do at each one of these. And all of this is available. Go to my website. You go down halfway and you'll see Pine Board. There's probably 50, 60 pages about that project. And it'll take you all through it, where you can buy the parts, all you can. So we'll add to it eventually. But it's just so much fun to build. I can be here all night talking about building things, but it's what made me. It's how I learned to do all this stuff. I get a kick out of, I'll go into some of these arenas when I was doing all the large sound systems. They're either their engineer or their audio guy goes, well, hey, what college did you come from? Where'd you learn? I didn't go. I barely got out of high school because I was playing. I was making a lot of money when I was in high school playing the organ professionally. But when I got out, okay, I got into other things. Where'd you learn all this? Ham radio. No. I'm talking about what school did you go? I said, ham radio. No, you don't understand. I said, no, you don't understand. I learned how to do all of this from amateur radio, and I'm still doing it. And so I hope that a lot of you can pick up on some of this. I get sometimes 100 emails a day, and I will answer them. Sometimes it takes me a day or two, but I get there. So I want you to know there's somebody to help you. And there's a lot of us out here. I just am very blessed to have a platform with Ham Nation and other things. And these, I'm doing several of these a week all around the country. And even tomorrow afternoon, tonight in London, I'll do a session similar to this to London. God, I'm going in Australia coming up. And it's just so much fun to share the science of this hobby, because there's nothing like it. And if you are not watching Ham Nation, please do. This is a great program. It's going into the 9th year, 10th year. I lose track anymore. And we just have so much fun. But it's something that will teach you how to do things. That's my whole thing. I want to teach you because people have taught me. And one of the blessings of my life, other than meeting up with my wonderful wife, Sarah, who actually owns Heil Sound these days. I just invent stuff for him and do these kind of things. But a couple of years ago, I was honored by receiving a doctorate degree from Missouri University. And I couldn't believe it when they called me and told me this was going to happen, because as I told you, I barely got out of school. And they asked me, the curator and chancellor at one of the dinners afterwards said, well, how do you feel about this? And I said, I really feel kind of strange. They said, why? I said, well, I'm very honored, but I barely got out of school. I said, I have a stepson who spent 16 years getting his PhD. The chancellor looked over at me and he said, yeah, but it took you 50 years. And I never thought about it like that, but it's true. Every day I learn something. Every day I try to teach people things that I have learned along the way. And hopefully that meetings like this, we can do more. And I love doing them. And let me tell you, I love sharing this hobby. There's so much there. Last but not least, we had another incredible thing happen a couple of years back. Heil Sound is the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in Cleveland is all about the artist, as it should be. But one of the curators said, you know what? We need to look at the guys that put all this stuff together for them. And we were it, because we were doing things that not very many did. We built the first quadrophenia system, the first quadraphonic system for quadrophenia for Pete Townsend and the Who. The talk box has been gigantic in what we did there, and just bringing high level, high articulation to sound systems. And that's the whole deal. I don't go to concerts anymore other than to help somebody. But when I do, I can't stand the sound systems today. They're too loud, they're too bassy, and they have no mid-range. I can't understand the words. And I'm not deaf. I was very blessed. When I was a young kid getting into this business, a guy gave me a pair of ear valves like they use for shooters, little aluminum valves. They have a diaphragm in them. Whispers, no problem hearing you, but when it gets up to 90 dB, it just drops off. I was very blessed because I still have my hearing. A lot don't. But it's just so wonderful to be able to spend some time with you. I hope we can spend more, because there's so much we could talk about. We could pick on all kinds of subjects. Well, I wonder if you have any questions. Have you been collecting anything for me that we might want to talk about?
Dr. Heil, could I ask you a question about theater organs?
Absolutely.
I have a 7-rank 2-manual Wurlitzer in my house that I've been trying to record decently for years. I even went out and bought RCA 44 mics off the eBay, and I can't get a decent recording. What do you think I'm doing wrong?
Got the wrong microphone.
Okay.
You really do. Those ribbons were great, but you're in a home, right? I mean, your house, right?
Right.
It's small. It's not a huge arena.
It's a 2,500 square foot house. The pipes are on one floor and the console's down on the next.
Yeah, let me see if I can show you. Oh gosh, I can't. On this level up above, let me see here. Hang on a minute. Hang on. think you'll be able to see this. It's up a little bit. Those are all the speakers. And this organ is a 24 rank, 3 manual Allen digital. It's Wurlitzer that's been sampled, and I use a pair of our PR30s. For the low end, that's for the one chamber, the PR40 for the low, of course, and a pair of PR30s. The PR30 microphone is unheralded. It's unbelievable. I do symphonies with it. I do all kinds of things, but that's the kicker. That really plays big time. So you want to pay attention to the PR30. And for everybody else, this is what, let's see if I can get that to stay. Maybe. Well, no, I know what I'll do. Hold on a minute. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. That's what's in front of me. I just turned the camera backwards. And I love to play. I play every day. And it's wonderful. It's part of my life that has been there since I was a kid. I was so fortunate that in the early days, playing at the Fox, my goodness, we were able to do some really great things and learn a lot of different things. But yeah, call me sometime and we'll play around with some microphones for your recording.
Okay, thank you. In fact, my website is museumofyesterday.org. Has all the pictures of the organ and everything on it. So if you want to take a look sometime.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? You got to have something.
Come on, people. You talk on microphones. It's not that hard.
I have a question. KX4EF, do you have a comment on PZM mics?
Well, they have a purpose, not in ham radio at all. They have a purpose for meetings and things where you want to pick up several people. They're not the greatest quality in the world. So I don't play with them much because, as I said, they're really, they're not in our league.
Thank you. I use them for stage work, and they don't get echo that you get off directed mics, which is interesting.
Oh, yeah. See, that kind of stuff works great. You lay them flat on the stage, and that part works great. But you can also do that with dynamic microphones, the right dynamics. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
The other night, we were discussing about the commercials on TV, how they're, limited on their volume, but they turn their gain up and
they don't.
It annoys me.
No, they don't. You ready? Here's the answer. You ready? Because I remember my mentor from day one was the engineer at KMOX CBS Radio. I did a television show for about 4 years in St. Louis. I was on 25 years. I was on KMOX radio as a high-tech Heil done in the 70s. Here's the deal. Remember what I told you? And you want to go back and look at that chart that Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson learned about our ears. The human ear is very responsive in that 2 to 4K. So what they do, and if you pay attention and listen hard, the commercials, they poke up that mid-range because they have limiters. They have very expensive limiters for the level. That level will not go above that. But if they roll off the low end and roll off the extreme highs, and what's left, your brain, which is an amazing calculator, your brain hears it louder, but it's not louder. The mid-range is louder. And because it can't be louder because the limiters would take them down. And I hear that a lot, and I get that question a lot. But, working in the broadcast industry all those years, and I saw it and was part of it, but that's what it is. But I agree with you. Some of it gets ridiculous, and I wish they'd do something different, but they don't, and that's kind of sad. Sad for us.
I'm hoping as I get older that it doesn't irritate me as badly, but it's not working so far.
Well, there's lots of things we can do today in this world, that's for sure. Anybody else?
Dr. Heil?
Yes.
This is Ray, K9EID. I happen to be a proud owner of a Pro 7.
All right.
And enjoy it when I use it extremely well. And I got into engineering and radio at the age of 12.
All right.
I was a ham radio operator in 53. And got my first job in engineering at Curtiss-Wright, working on flight simulators and the Wankel engine, because the person who was in charge of that whole division hired me because I was a ham radio operator.
Yeah.
And I knew how to build breadboards. And the 42 engineers that had to work with me, they were great engineers, but none of them knew how to build a breadboard.
They didn't know which end of the soldering iron to hold, right?
Pretty much. And that's how my interview was, all of 5 minutes. And when he found out I was a ham radio operator, I was still wet behind the ears. As you know, as they say, you know, I was just born, and he found out I was a ham radio operator. I built my own equipment, built my own first transmitter and receiver.
Great. And
used that for, maybe 4.5 years, because I didn't have money to buy anything that had a modulator in it. So AM modulation was out of the question. So it was strictly code. And again, I learned all of that from my mentor, who was a chief radio operator for a merchant marine company that had 5 ships, and he ran the whole operation. And he showed me how to do things like being able to copy up to 40 words a minute, as we're talking here.
Where were you at Curtiss-Wright? What city?
In Patterson, New Jersey.
My father worked for Curtiss-Wright in 1942 through 44. Then he was taken off to the Navy.
Well, we were building flight simulators, and you know, it was an amazing thing, because we were just getting into. I've seen the first transistor building the servo systems for the flight simulators. I never seen a transistor up to that point.
Well, you should program some night. I'd love to hear all this stuff, because you got a lot of history, that's for sure. And I'm
that's why I appreciate your equipment.
Well, I appreciate you. I really do.
Thank you very much for this evening. I've enjoyed listening to you, but the Pro 7 is a great headset, and I enjoy it extensively.
Yeah, I needed to answer it. We needed to answer a good headset. And just
most of the other ones on the market, I couldn't stand even having them on my ears.
Right.
So, but yeah, and I got into ham radio with music and all involved with it. Never graduated from college.
Great story. Yeah.
But that's the way you do it sometimes. It's not always the education, it's the knowledge.
Yes. Well, we try to bring some of that here. Any other questions here? Somebody's got to have a question. Don't be shy.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Bob, I had that great QSO with you Sunday night on 21300. So everybody, Bob is on the radio. I called CQ on 21300. What? It was Sunday night, right? And I called CQ, and back Bob comes to me, and we had a great QSO, had a great time.
Want to hear the best of that contact? If I didn't tell you, this is a brand new studio for me. I've been here, maybe 6 months ago. We got it all together. We're still not done, because it's not just a ham radio station. It's a broadcast station for all my video stuff. It's for my organ. You see, I do a show every Saturday night on WTWW on the shortwave from here. And then I do a lot of other things with organ classes, so on. I don't have antennas up yet. I have a 75-meter antenna that's working halfway. But I've got, I want to listen. So I went out, had a couple speaker wires and nothing but zip cord. I cut them to frequency 20 meters or so. And it's out in a tree about maybe, lucky 15 feet. They'll be better, but I can listen. And every once in a while, I hear some of my friends on 18157.5. It's Bud Drummond, the buddy pole guy, and a friend of Bud's. And I wonder if he can hear me. I don't like tuners. I don't have any tuners. Oh, I have one, but I've never had it hooked up. I won it at a Hamfest 40 years ago. True story. And no, I want antennas that are cut to frequency, but this one wasn't. But I called him anyway. We work every day. Every day. It's amazing. But then I got to playing on 20 meters, and it works there. But then I talked to you the other night. It's just crazy. But I'm putting up a Force 12. In fact, it'll be shipped in here tomorrow, so on, so on. But so many people paid too much attention to SWR bridges, and oh my God, it's 1.8. Who cares? Who cares? Throw it up there and see if it works, because you might be surprised. You might be able to talk to you, right? I mean, that's what I did. And yeah, it's not 40/9. And yeah, I'm not running 1,000 watts into it. I'm barefoot of about, I don't know, what's that thing? 100, 200 watts, whatever, 7851. But people get all enamored with some of this stuff. Play with it. That's what we did early on. You can't see it, but it's down there. I still have that Harvey Wells. It's still on the air in the mornings on the MoCam net. It still has original tubes in it, and it's had every stupid kind of antenna on it. I used it on 6 meters for probably, 10 years. I never listened below 6 meters. So, I just want to encourage everybody to get on the air. I get so many emails from a lot of guys that just got their license, and they listen to some of the big boys. So, you don't have 7 elements on 20 meters. It's 100 foot. You shouldn't be on the air. Well, that's not right. It's not right. You'll be amazed what you can work, and make it. Have fun. And if you don't have... here I am, because I need to show this to you. Hang on. If you don't have one of these, get it. All of the stores have it. A Heil Ham Radio Handbook. I didn't write it. I compiled it. It's got things in it that you don't read about anymore. They're just some of the stuff I'm telling you about. They might be crude drawings, but they're good. They're things you don't see, because that's how I learned it from my mentors that would show me. And some of this stuff are their original drawings. I had some guy call me here, I don't know, a few years back. Well, you got the crappiest drawing. And I had to tell him, I didn't write this as an artistic wonder. It's handwritten notes from my mentors of 50 years ago. And so, yes, but you don't read this kind of stuff. And it's worth it for the back chapter. Got all kinds of charts and graphs and things you just don't see out there. They get the handbooks this thick. I can't even read them. Come on. So I wrote that and used all these notes from my mentors, and it's still being published. So I'm very happy about that, because it's helped a lot of people. I have clubs now buying like 2 and 3 dozen of them, and they give them out for people to entice them to be a ham. And if they're taking any kind of lesson courses, that's their first book. So that's the story on all of that. Well, sure nice to work you. Let's do it again. I'll have a bigger signal in a couple of weeks. Guaranteed. Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Heil, real quick. You were talking about the PA amplifiers on these transceivers. Is it more of a marketing thing, or what uses do you find for people who have these PA functions and features. We all have them. There are some people who have, you know, every once in a while they do have success using them. Any words of wisdom there?
What are you talking about? What are you,
receiving? So if you're trying to pull in a signal, as you showed in one of your videos, you don't really need to have that amplification. It just injects noise. Do you have good examples of, here's an application for the amplifier, the PA? You know, you've got a PA 1, 2, 3, whatever stage of amplification for the receiver.
The only thing to do is listen.
Oh, I'm with you, but I'm just asking if you've ever come across a time where that feature did help you.
Not really, because I am one that the only thing that really works is equalization.
Mm-hmm.
I am just absolutely dyed in the wool. The Bell Labs and Fletcher-Munson, and they figured out what we needed to hear.
Yeah.
And a lot of the manufacturers today don't pay attention to that. And I'm really happy that Dr. Inouye came to me and wanted to build that into his transceivers, and it's there. What would an Icom be without equalization? Go back and listen to a 735 or a 745 or a 740. We suffered. Not anymore. Not anymore. And all the Yaesus, it's great. So you just have to pick what works for you.
Hey, Bob, I'll hop in here for a second. I wanted to say it's really nice to see the Drake 2B up there on the shelf. I've got one here too.
Mine?
So, mine's not nearly as nice looking as yours, but it works pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I know you do a lot of stuff on Ham Nation about, you know, building older tube equipment, and I love doing restorations. I've got a Valiant I'm working on right now. But I'm just curious, like in terms of operating, how often would you say you operate solid state versus tube gear?
I'm on AM quite often. Probably 60-70%. There's really a growth in AM because up until the Pro 1, Pro 2, that series, Yaesu, let's go back 15 years even. Everything before it was terrible on AM. And they were always engineering for sideband only. And AM took a back seat. Well, now, oh man, you take anything, Pro 1, 7300. I'm hearing 7300s all over the place. And they sound beautiful with the right microphone. And equalize it right. Oh man, it's great. And so I'm really happy about that. That AM is, I can't say it's a resurgence, it's just more people find out how much fun it is. And it doesn't have to be tubes. So I'd like to be with you today. Looks like you're having fun. What is that you're working on?
Oh, it's a Johnson Viking Valiant.
Okay, yeah.
So working on that. I love doing restoration stuff. And I also noticed you have the Central Electronics 20A there too. Not AM, but another fine old tube rig.
Oh, no. It works
Well,
great.
I mean, it will do AM, yes, but.
Yeah, it works great on AM.
Oh, yeah.
But that's a whole story. We should do a night on all of that kind of good stuff. Wes Shum became a good friend of mine. And it's really amazing. His life is just something else. He brought single sideband to this industry. Without Wes Shum, I don't know where you'd be. And if you had a trivia contest and you said, who brought sideband to ham radio, you'd probably say Art Collins. Nope. He was a latecomer of about, what was it, maybe 8 years before he got anything happening. And so anyway, there's so much history about all this, and I love all, because it's old stuff and it all works. And I use it every day just about. And I can't wait to get up some of my other antennas here at the new location. But God bless you. Stay in touch with me. See what you're doing then.
Will do. Thanks, Bob, for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anybody else have questions?
I don't have a question, but I have an anecdote about building there, Bob.
Yeah.
I was always interested in attaching wires to radios, and that goes back to the little Radio Shack transistor radios we used to get, the Battery of the Month Club, and just hooking up a wire to my little AM radio at 7 years old and finding out I could listen to a ball game in the Midwest from Philadelphia. That was cool. So in reading magazines, and when I became a ham, not only did I read QST, but I read 73 and I still read CQ. I saw an article in CQ about loading the gutter as an antenna.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, you can't do that. Well, I had an Omni D, Tentec Omni D, and I loaded the gutter.
Yeah.
The SWR was 1.4 to 1, and I call out CQ, and I get the first contact on CW was with a ham in Appalachia. And he comes back, he asked me, after the 599 report, he says, what are you using for your antenna in your rig? Well, I told him I was loading my Omni D into a gutter. And the guy was like, no. I said, yeah, I'm using a gutter. He said, that sounds fine business. I said, well, I just played with an article in CQ, and there you go. Simple as that. I think we all have our interests.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yeah, my love of this hobby is all because of the crazy things we do, and I love sharing all of it with you guys and gals. I got a deal for you, Dave.
Yes, sir.
How about if I go over here and turn the camera around, and play the organ in about 2 minutes?
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Yes, sir. This is your
Absolutely.
like I said, this is visited. All we're doing is hanging out with a ham on a Tuesday night.
I think 5 minutes would be better than 2.
Bob, do you ever work with any hearing aid companies?
No, but I should.
Yeah, you really should.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, they need me.
Yeah, one of the things they were talking about the other night was about the radio affecting the hearing aids. So, yeah.
Well, we solved that with the Pro 7. Okay, hope this all works out. Okie dokie. Yeah, there we go. Fun stuff.
Bravo.
Hey, that was terrific.
Not
Smell the popcorn right now.
Yeah, that's right. Not sure how the audio would have been on that. I should have checked it. There's 6 of our the PR30s, but I don't know how I didn't level or so on. But I hope you enjoyed that. Listen,
Bob, when you started playing, it reminded me of the late great Larry Ferrari out of Philadelphia, where I grew up.
Yeah.
And the minute you put I just thought of Mr. Ferrari.
Yep, he was a good.
I remember him.
Hey, Bob, I've got here in my hand the copy of your 1997 album that I won as a door prize at a Yankee Clipper contest meeting years ago.
Goodness, wow.
And you autographed it on the inside and said, I'll open it up because I got to read it. Keep the signals in underlined phase. 73, Bob.
That's my byline. Keep it in phase. That's right.
Did you say something about receiving CW for those of us who do that?
Do what now?
About receiving CW.
Well, the thing about CW is you got to pick out what frequency you like to listen to, dump everything else. And if you have an equalizer to help you do that, you don't have all those harmonics coming in and causing problems. You're listening to one tone only. That's the whole deal.
Anything special about what we should have for our ears?
Nope. The Pro 7 it's it. I mean, it's the DXpeditions, the contesters, they love it because it doesn't add anything. It just enhances what you're looking for and listening at.
Very good. Well, thank you, Bob. 73.
Well, thanks, everybody. This has been great. Let's come back and talk about whatever. There's so many subjects, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to a return. And otherwise, I'll see you on the air. So be sure and visit our website. There's a lot going on there, and got a lot of special sales going on also in the web store. So take care, 7-3, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye-bye for now.
Dr. Heil, thank you very much. We'll see you at Dayton next year.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, guys.
Heil has left the building.
Hopefully you've had a good evening. And if you would like to hang around, you are more than welcome.